there's one particular huge problem that we're now dealing with, and that problem is frustration. So frustration is a huge issue in the dog owning world, and the reason it's such a big issue is because no one's taught what it is in dogs, what it looks like and how to prevent it. So people usually aren't aware that their dog suffers from frustration, and that's the problem. So the definition of frustration is, I looked it up for you, is the feeling of being upset or annoyed as a result of being unable to change or achieve something, or the prevention of the progress, success or fulfillment of something. So quite simply, in dogs, this looks like pulling on the lead, lunging on the lead, barking, air snapping, lead and clothing grabbing, legging it off across a field, over boisterous play style, excessive mouthing, destruction, pacing, circling. It can take many forms. So it can often be difficult to pinpoint that your dog has frustration because you think your dog has lead walking issues or recall issues, or they're just rude. So we're very often contacted for dog training sessions for heel work, or as we call it, loose lead walking, or we get called in for recall training, or for behaviour sessions for like barking and lunging as dogs and people go past, mouthing at the owner's arms or clothing. And so yes, your dog does pull on lead. No, they don't listen to you when you call them back. Yes, they do bark and lunge at people or dogs as they go past, or birds or whatever it may be. But that's not actually your problem. It's a symptom of the problem. And the real problem you have is frustration. And that is what needs dealing with. The frustration needs dealing with, or you'll never get anywhere. It will just manifest itself elsewhere. So you could sort the lead walking out and the dog will walk well on lead, and then the problem will come out elsewhere. So you need to deal with the frustration itself. And as with all behavioural problems, you need to learn about where the behaviour comes from in order to move forwards and to create a more desirable behaviour in its place. So looking back, I can show you where it comes from. So we go to visit lots and lots of puppies in their first week or two of living with their new owners in their new homes. And usually everyone's full of enthusiasm and excitement about everything that they're going to do with the puppy, and they want him to be sociable and friendly and walk nicely on lead, and be able to go off lead and to listen to them and to listen to their cues, to settle down for bed, not to destroy anything. You know, people often have the same goals in mind, and the reason for that is because it's the ideal dog. It's the ideal dog I would like as well. Then the unfortunate truth is that most people will give up on their puppy with their plans to create this ideal dog. They will give up within less than 12 weeks of owning them. So less than 12 weeks doesn't sound that long, but that's about accurate for when people stop. So I don't think that the problem is that owners don't socialise their puppies. I actually believe that they do. I believe they do take their puppies to puppy training classes and socialise them. And I believe that lots of people do socialise their puppies outside of classes too. So often they will do a course, puppy training for about 6 to 7 weeks. And then they will do a week or two follow-up after that. So they'll take their puppy to places and they'll be like, oh, yep, got to remember to do a bit of lead walking. Oh, yep, got to meet a new dog each week. And by now the puppy's about 5 months old. Then it usually stops. So the problem usually starts when the puppy gets a bit bigger and a little bit stronger, and people don't start to see them as puppies anymore. So sadly, this is actually when your puppy needs you to increase your training and increase their socialising, increase their new experiences. They want to find new challenges and to be involved in more daily life activities than they ever have before. They're sleeping less and they want to be involved in more things. And this is where frustration starts creeping in at around 5 months old. So we've certainly seen it more in young puppies lately, and the youngest we've seen very strong frustration behaviours in was a 9-week-old puppy. So frustration is typically more common in some breeds than others. So we find that Shepherds, Vizslas, Labradors and their crosses tend to suffer more so with frustration. Young adolescent dogs who are jumping all over other dogs, putting paws all over them, obsessively humping them, grabbing them and not acknowledging the body language from the other dog. It's all incredibly rude. It's very rude behaviour, and most adult dogs will not tolerate it at all from them. But the problem is these youngsters are usually by now so desperate for a response from a dog that any response will do, even if it's a negative response. In bigger and stronger breeds, frustration can look much, much worse. And often by the time the puppy is about 7 months old, the owners can't hold them back and they get embarrassed by their puppy's behaviour. So they either start keeping their puppy on a lead or walking them in isolated areas, or they go out at times where they're not like to see people. Which means when they do eventually see a dog or they do eventually see a person, the response is so much worse from them and the reaction is just so extreme because they're not used to seeing the dogs and people then. So it becomes quite a vicious cycle. If you're thinking about a timeline, so a puppy leaves its mum and litter mates at about 2 months old, where they've had constant dog interaction 24/7. They are never without a dog. So that's at 2 months old, they leave that. They can officially go out for proper walks and socialise by the time they're 3 months old, if you think after injections and after they're safe enough to go out. And within 4 months, the owners stop letting their puppies mingle with dogs and other people freely. So it's very, very short amount of time, but usually by 4 months in of owning them, they've had it. So frustration is our number one problem as dog trainers and behaviourists. So more often than not, we're called in when the behaviour's got too much to handle. So the dog could have been practising this behaviour for weeks or months or sometimes even years, and then we're called in to deal with it. And there's a very, very high number of dogs in rescue centres whose behavioural problems are actually caused by frustration that was left unaddressed and then got too much to handle. So I work with and assess a huge number of rescue dogs every year, and the amount of these dogs who are labelled as dog aggressive, people aggressive, just aggressive, unpredictable, not to be rehomed is huge. Now, I'm not knocking rescues at all here. They do an absolutely blinding job, and rescue people have my utmost respect, so I'm really not knocking rescue staff here. It's just an observation of a very preventable problem that the original owner should have been able to deal with a very long time ago, but sadly the information just isn't out there. People just don't know that frustration is their problem. So what causes frustration? There's 3 things which can be separate or can be all 3 combined. And these dogs who have all 3 things combined are some of the most frustrated dogs I've ever met. And some of them can be really, really young as well. They can be under a year, around 6 months even. If they have all these 3 things combined, their frustration will be huge. So the first one's barrier and isolation. So barriers are things like leads, long lines, crates, gates, X-pens, being shut away when guests come, being shut away at meal times, being shut away when the owners are out at work, having long hours where they're isolated. Most barriers are for the dog's safety, and certainly in the world we live in, to keep in line with dog laws, but nonetheless they are still barriers and they do still cause frustration to dogs. They can see something or they know something is there, but they are prevented from getting to it. So whether the barrier is required or not, it's largely irrelevant. They cause frustration. So in the modern day, it's busier everywhere. There's more dogs, more people, more laws and less space. Owners are liable for keeping their dogs, if their dogs misbehave in public, and the general go-to for keeping their dogs on the right side of the law and not upsetting anyone is to keep the dog on lead and avoid everyone, or walk the dog less or at unsociable hours, because they just don't want their dog to upset anybody. So then we have isolation side of barriers and isolation. And quite often there is far too much focus into leaving a puppy alone. We get asked all the time, how do we get the puppy used to being left alone overnight? Or how do I get him used to being left alone when we're out? Or how can I build up how long I can leave him alone for? And we get told we can leave the puppy for 4 hours in his crate and he's absolutely fine. Why is there so much focus on leaving puppies alone? Yes, they do have to be able to be left because of life. And they have to be okay without feeling anxious and getting separation anxiety. But this can be built up slowly and will naturally happen when a puppy is tired and mentally stimulated and needing a rest to absorb everything they've learned that day if they've been with you and doing new things and mixing and socialising. So why is the main focus always on how long they can be left and when they can be left? If owners are so adamant that their puppy or dog needs to be okay with being left for such long periods of time, then why would you get one in the first place? They're highly sociable animals. They crave social interaction from both humans and dogs, and leaving them alone for hours and hours every day causes high levels of frustration. So that's just cause number one. So cause number two is the same old thing. So owners who do the same things with their dogs day in, day out. They have the same food in the same bowl at the same time each day. They have the same walk in the same place where they see the same dogs and they smell the same smells. They have the same toys on the floor and see the same people in the house. So how stimulating does that sound? Does it sound very fun? No, it's because it's not. So puppies and young dogs who don't have regular new experiences and stimulation are actually the ones who suffer the most from frustration and have an inability to absorb and learn new things as easily as those who do have regular new experiences and stimulation. Those dogs who have set things in their day, they make them the paramount of importance to them until that's all they want because there's nothing else stimulating their brains. And then they get frustrated when they don't get it. So their food, their walks, any socialising, play or attention, they get so frustrated because they want it because that is all they have in their life. Those few things, and they remain very, very high value to them. So that's cause number two. And cause number three is overtraining. So there's obsessive owners who insist on their dog being so well behaved that they almost knock the dog out of them. They are so desperate for their puppy to grow up and be well behaved that they actually block them from socialising and experiencing life properly and as a dog should. So heel work, sitting on cue at roadside, sitting when they see other dogs rather than interacting normally, maintaining a sit or down stay for 2 minutes are prioritised over a dog being socially confident and without any social frustrations and actually being a dog. So these are often the dogs who've gone through multiple levels of training classes. Their owners have a list of long as your arm of the things that their dog can and can't do, and they often daren't let their dog off lead when anything is within a 100-foot radius for fear their dog will run off to it. Because the training actually only works when it's combined with freedom and continued free socialising without constant human interruption. So you should definitely be training your dogs. I'm not suggesting you don't, but they need to have it combined with free socialisation and lots of experiences. So those things are actually what cause frustration. So it's barriers and isolation, doing the same thing every day, and the overtraining. So now you're going to be thinking, how do I ever prevent frustration from starting? If I can't do these things, how do I prevent it? So it's early and continued exposure to new things from as soon as you get them until they're about 3 years old. So dogs are not mentally and physically grown until they're approximately 3 years old. Now obviously this varies depending on the breed and size of dog you have, but if you just keep 3 years old in your head, then that will be an easy goal. Frustration creeps in when the dog is not having enough to mentally stimulate them. So we always advise taking puppies to garden centres, to coffee shops, to pet shops, cafes, pubs, pub gardens, friends and relatives' houses. Take them to see new things, to smell new smells, see new people, meet new dogs, see walking sticks, wheelchairs, trolleys, etc. So teaching young puppies how to settle down with a Kong in a pub and pub gardens. Have a meal out with your puppy. Take them to be part of the family and teach them how to behave in other people's houses. Show them where the toilet is first, the garden, and then teach them how to relax whilst you chat. And we advise this to all of our puppy owners, but only a small number of them ever actually will. Teach young puppies to problem solve, so problem solving techniques. And by teaching them to deal with and to cope with tiny minor frustrations from young will actually help them to be better equipped and able to deal with potentially bigger frustrations when they're older and bigger and stronger. So you must learn to control the resource that your dog wants over the puppy. So allowing access to resources when the dogs are polite and when polite behaviours are shown. So for example, if a dog is being hesitating, if they are keeping 4 paws on the floor, if they're calm, then they can have access to other areas, so like opening a door, being off the lead, and instead of trying to battle through doorways and dragging you everywhere. And you don't have to be telling them to sit and stay. So there's a huge world of difference between compliance and self-control. So compliance can cause frustration, whereas self-control is a learned response without the need for reminding. So this is why we like to teach self-control over compliance, because it's the dog doing it themselves. So that's all for puppies, how to prevent it in the first place. So say like you've got a dog who's already frustrated. Everything that should have happened with your puppy is just quite annoying to hear about. I know, I'm one of these rescue dog owners who come with these issues. And hearing about how you could have helped it really is just a kick in the teeth. So if your dog already has frustration, whether it is a rescue dog, a rehome dog, or you've had it from young and it's grown up and it has frustration issues, it's easy enough to come by. You'd be asking, can it actually be undone in dogs? And the answer is yes, it can.
Dog training and working on changing your dog's behaviour shouldn't be stressful or unenjoyable. And if it is, you're doing it wrong, or something isn't right and it just needs adjusting. You and your dog deserve the best life together, with fun, enjoyable walks and a relaxed and calm home life. It's not a pipe dream. I'm here to give you support and to help you have the dog you always wanted. Book your free consultation call with me today.